Well, welcome everybody to another of our online reflection for learning activities. This one is about exploring implicit understanding, and it's a kind of an exploration which comes partly out of Eugene Gendlin's work on felt understanding, but you can trace that right back to Socrates and the experiencing of discovering you don't know what you thought you knew, and that being an illuminating experience. So we'll just do a little reflective practice exercise that takes us into that. So if everybody could just relax, and if you can find your way there, come to a place where you feel quietly curious, or at least find your way to some place where you feel like doing an exercise. So just take a few breaths, settle into your seat, and just arrive in a gentle place where you're kind of curious to do a bit of exploring. Now we're going to use as an example topic reflecting, so a la this series of videos, but if you're teaching this, you could use any topic. So from that kind of relaxed, quiet, curious place, just ponder what reflecting is. Call to mind some of your experiences with reflecting, experiences of thinking about it, learning about it, reading about it, wondering about it, doing it. So just sitting with you, reflecting as you know it and as you've experienced it. Lots of examples will come to mind for us in this group. So letting situations, examples, theories, curiosities, uncertainties come to mind. Letting your wonderings come to the fore. Take your time to just get a feel for the whole of what reflecting is. There's this kind of large amalgam there with many different strands and edges and bits and pieces. Just see if you can get a feel for the whole of all of that as you know and understand it and have experienced it. And they're sort of sitting there curiously with that emerging sense of all of what reflecting is. Think about what puzzles you most about reflecting. What feels really unclear about it? What are you curious about it, where you kind of would like to take your understanding or your practice further? So sitting with the not knowing aspects of all this, the places where you're a bit puzzled, or maybe you feel a little bit disoriented, or you kind of don't know something you'd like to know, or maybe something feels a bit vague. Just really feel the taste and the texture of that kind of the not knowing that goes with being a bit puzzled or very puzzled, but unclear or very unclear, uncertain. So take some time to really kind of feel what being puzzled involves, what being unclear involves. And now I'd like to just do one last movement, which is to sit with what do you know when you don't know? What's the kind of underground of knowing or understanding that's involved in recognizing that you don't know, or you're puzzled, or you're unclear? if you find you're unsure about something, what's involved in knowing you're unsure? What's involved in knowing you're unsure about it? So if you're puzzled about reflecting in some way, what's going on in that puzzlement? What's the understanding of the being puzzled, of the being finding something complicated and difficult and curiously unclear, whatever it is for you? When you feel ready, just come back to being quietly curious about the whole process. And I welcome any comments about what you've learned about the knowing that's involved in not knowing. The way not knowing is quite interestingly grounded in some kind of being oriented. I'll just invite you, if anybody would like to make any comments on what they experienced and what they found, please feel free. Yeah, go for it, Marina.
For me, it was really interesting because when we reach a stage at because you use the question from memory, yeah, how do you feel when something's unclear? And my feeling immediately was that my mouth was dry. And I thought the answer to that is I would have a drink. In other words, I've got a thirst for knowledge. So I had a very strong physical reaction to that question.
Yeah, yes. And it makes me think about the sense of not being able to speak, not being able to say. It's delightfully somatically resonant. Yeah, go for it, Agnes.
The thing I thought, Greg, about that process of reflection and thinking about questions was the uncertainty for me was when to ask questions and when to listen. And I was thinking through that, and it was a good reminder about when I'm in some difficult unknowing contexts, that I have a choice about which way to go.
Thank you. And Anne-Louise or Kate, do you have anything to say about the kind of knowing that underpins the not knowing? Go for it, Anne-Louise.
I guess what I was thinking is that sometimes in order to recognize that you don't know something, you first have to know something. So you can't have one without the other, and you might come to a point of frustration because you can't possibly know everything. Therefore, I think in life, even if we reflect, there has to be a certain amount of speculation or assumption or judgment or assessment of situations. But yeah, I did find that interesting that it's very much a binary. You can't have one without the other, and in fact, if you acknowledge that you don't know, that's the first step of knowing.
It's that's very much Socrates' heart, I think. And Kate, do you want to say anything?
I spent a lot of time with my students last week on this very point, and thanks to you, Greg. And it was a really interesting journey when I introduced the idea that not knowing is actually a form of knowing. And lots of them said how comforting that was, in that it was okay not to know and to feel uncomfortable and to feel frustrated. And by the time we got to the end, where they actually then did know more, but still not everything that they had thought they would learn. And it was really a powerful way of talking about uncertainty and to give people some sort of certainty within that. So I found it really effective. So thank you.
Oh, lovely. Yeah, I mean, the sort of general thing I'd say is that everything we encounter in our own lives is so rich, so vast in relation to what we know how to say about it, that everywhere we look, if you actually pay kind of a bit of intricate attention, you'll find yourself discovering not knowings opening up all around you. And it's quite delightful if you kind of relax into it. There's so many opportunities to learn and inquire and be curious. So this is just moving on, Marina. This is a new activity that we will put hopefully in a second edition of our Reflection for Learning guide. The guide's a great resource for understanding about reflective practice, and we very much encourage you to have a look at that, see what there is in there that you can use and adapt for your own purposes. And if you'd like to give us some feedback, you can email us on reflection4lc@gmail.com. Thank you.